Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful, not interviews, but obviously monologues. Today I'm back in the studio. A few people have shared the website that I'm going to show you in a moment, and I'm just going to go through it and see if it makes any sense to you. However, before we go any further, I just want to remind people that we have a forum. That link will be in the description, of course, and a big thank you to everybody who's helping to keep the channel going with their donations. Very, very kind of you, and thank you to that. Another question that people have been asking me is what's happened to Funky Prepper? We're in this time of prepping, and Funky Prepper seems to have disappeared. I've tried calling him, the lovely Darren, that is Funky Prepper, and people been getting in touch with me saying, I don't know, is he all right? Hasn't put anything up for about a month. So I don't know. I can't tell you anymore. I have tried to reach out to him, but I've heard nothing. So if you're there, Darren, Funky Prepper, if you're there, out there, and you need some help, support, or whatever, or you're just taking some time off, just let us know, because your fans are worried. That's what we do, we YouTubers. We all gather around, and if we hear that somebody is a bit under the weather or there's some problems or whatever, we'll go and try and sort them all out and be there for you. Anyway, so that's that. Now, people have sent me this website here, which I shall share with you. And this is a UK Parliament website, and it's Call for Evidence. And I think the worrying thing is that people are saying that this is this evidence for having cash? But I'm not quite sure it is what it says it is, but maybe it is. Let's have a look. It says acceptance of cash, call for the evidence. The committee is inquiring into whether there is a need in the UK to regulate or mandate the acceptance of physical cash in the form of notes and coins. The inquiry will consider any need for legislation and or regulation and potential costs to consumers and businesses. So what this isn't saying there, as far as I can see, is it's not saying we're going to get rid of cash. I mean, the government has made it clear that even if they bring in the CBDCs, they're not going to get rid of cash. And let's face it, at the moment, that's the, well, it's not the only option, but it's mainly the only option if you want to have a private transaction with somebody, that you go in with banknotes, which, of course, are valueless. They have no cash behind them, or they have no money, real true money, like gold or silver behind them. They are just there on the basis of faith, really, that a note by the Bank of England, which is a private company, has some value. And then you have to ask yourself, when you buy something with a Bank of England banknote, what is it? It has the promise, but what is it actually promising? I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £20. £20 of what? Mouldy potatoes? I keep saying the same thing, but nobody really tells me what it is actually promising, because there's nothing behind it. We know that. The bank knows that, and yet we're still using that. Maybe we should be looking at something else, not digital currency. For me, I would still like something which I can hold in my hand that nobody else has any business with, and I don't rely on electronics, and I don't rely on anybody else having to mine to keep the currency going. You know, you hear about that with Bitcoin, all these blooming miners and their hard hats and going down into the pit of the earth, digging away at the coalface to get those Bitcoins out. Not for me, thank you very much. But anyway, this website here that people have been telling me, I don't think it is about taking that, but it is about saying whether businesses actually have to accept cash or not. That's what it seems to be saying. And it wants some evidence about that. So it says, we would welcome evidence in the following. What is the current state, recent trends and or forecasts for cash acceptance in the UK? Are the groups in society that disproportionately rely on business and public services accepting cash? What challenges do they face? Well, I can tell you one challenge is that some banks are saying you can't put in very much cash. Should the government require parts of the economy always to accept cash? So this does seem to be just a question about whether they can shift it slowly away from cash. What are the practical challenges that businesses might face from having always accepted cash? They're trying to find negatives, I suppose, if you can see it that way. What would, let's just scroll up a bit there. What would the costs be to private firms and the private sector from any imposed requirements to always accept cash? And how might any requirement for cash acceptance affect financial service firms? and so on and so on. So you can see. So, and then they want that information. I'll leave the link in the description if you are a business and you prefer to have cash and you want to sort of say, no, please don't get rid of it. But it may just be that some businesses don't want to handle cash. And the answer there is, if you prefer to have a private transaction and you don't want the slippery slope towards CBDCs, is not to use those businesses. So if a business says, actually, we would like to see regulation, we would like to see some modification, that we do not actually have to accept legal tender, we don't have to accept cash, and there may be a difference between those two, as people often send me the nuances between these things, then we don't use their services. As simple as that. If you won't accept private dealings with me when I just come out with my notes and my cash, but we have to carry it to the bank and, we might get robbed and there may be some bloke with a stripy T-shirt and a little sort of mask over his face. Well, there was a time when you could go to the bank with a mask over your face. And in fact, they wouldn't let you in, as I seem to remember trying to go in to the bank during that particular time in 2020 when you had to have a mask on your face, which is a little ironic. I don't think they would still let you in with guns. I'm not sure of that, but you could go in with a mask. It's one way. And a bag of swag, maybe they could still do that. The whole nonsense of 2020 still lingers in the back of my skull, unfortunately. Does it yours? Has it changed? This is the new normal. Did we ever go back to the old normal, the normal that we were kind of accepting? Or were we actually just seeing us being slowly funneled into a direction of which 2020 was the beginning, a gateway into this new normal of tyrannical governments and things like that? So anyway, that's what it seems to me. It isn't actually saying we're going to get rid of cash, although it's probably on that journey, isn't it? As saying, well, if firms don't have to accept cash, that is one way of, by the backhand, getting rid of it. And, the sad part is that young people, and there are young people in the world, who have these mobile phones and do everything on that mobile phone. And this is what I think people don't really fully grasp, is how much of that is being recorded and how much, when you are paying in a non-private way, even if it is with fiat currency and cash, if you're paying in a non-private way, these people know exactly what you're doing. They know what you bought and they can see the trends and they can work out what you're likely to buy in the future. And that is, I think, a problem. Because if we want a free world, we need to find a mechanism that is free and private. And maybe gold and silver is ultimately the way. Now, I know people will say, but Richard, the gold and silver prices, they're all governed by other bodies. They're all in the nefarious world. They're all doing that. That may be true. And I get you. I get you. But if we are able, and it seems to me absolutely the most important thing, other than eating and having a shelter over our head and nurturing our children and educating our children ourselves without the government doing it for us, is to be able to transact privately without anybody knowing, without anybody interfering, without anybody saying, no, you can't buy that, or you can't have too much of that, or you've had enough of that and you can't have any more. We don't want any of that. We talked about the carbon credits being sneaked in. And the minute you start taking away cash, that private transaction, you are then putting somebody else in power to control how you spend your money. And if you rely on the electronical stuff, like the bitcoins and the cryptocurrency and all of that. I'm not saying you don't use some of it. I mean, we do, after all, have debit and credit cards, which is a digital form of payment, but we don't necessarily only have that. We can still go back to cash if the banks will let us have it. And if the banks, by the way, if the banks won't let us have it, won't let us have cash, then maybe we just have to use other things, chocolate buttons, seashells, various other things, tokens, gold and silver. Maybe at the end of the day, it's down to us to decide what we want and how we want to trade. There may be millions and millions of us, and so you can't get that consortium of everybody doing it. But if you could set up with your farm shop, with your little local store, an agreement to trade for silver coins, for example, then maybe you could circumvent the nonsense the government want. They are just throwing everything they can at us. And they think that we're just going to bow down or have to, because they'll send the boys in with the big sticks. But I think we're becoming more resilient, aren't we, as we begin to wake up and see just how tyrannical these people are and just how much these supposed public servants who are supposed to work for us, not the other way round, we start to realise just how weak their position is, because in our numbers we can undermine all of it, and we can do what we damn well like if we can get ourselves organised and agree not to rely too much, and we take back responsibility for ourselves and live honourably and fairly. Then we don't really need these people, do we? But anyway, that's it. I'll put the link in the description. Do check it out. If you've seen Funky Prepper, let me know. And a big thank you to everybody watching and supporting the channel. I appreciate it very much indeed. If you happen to be around, I think it's tomorrow as I launch this video on the 23rd of November at the Attic, and you want to come along and see Sandy Adams, Mark Byford, the bowler hat farmer, and myself discussing the food crisis and farming, then you'd be very welcome if there are enough spaces left. But I dare say it's sold out, but there you go. Anyway, till next time, thanks for watching. Goodbye.